Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the strangest ways of making a case for Islam is by presenting the arguments against Islam. Because the dumber the arguments are, the shallower they are, the more ridiculous they are, the stronger Islam seems to be. Because why would people be so desperate when it comes to their types of argumentation? Think about it. A false prophet is supposed to be really easy to expose. And yet we see these guys fumbling again and again, failing to argue for their theories. So the hadith that we're talking about today is a narration that you can find in Musnad Ahmad and Mustadrak al-Hakim, in which Aisha says that when the revelation comes down upon the Prophet, peace be upon him, while he's upon the camel itself would kneel down, would go down to the ground due to the heavy weight of the revelation. She recites, "Inna sanulqi alayka qawlan thaqila." So here is the response of Dr. Ali Sina.
Sometimes he said when he's riding a camel, the camel stops and knees down.
Yeah, Muslims use that as evidence that the power of the camel made the power of revelation made the camel kneel, because it was so strong revelation,
So intense.
revelation. But the fact is that when you are having epilepsy, animals around you, many animals around you sense it. Now they train cats and dogs sense it also. Now they train dogs for epileptic people, who senses before the owner himself that
Falls down.
Yeah, exactly, and warns him. So the animal senses the symptoms, probably through a smell or something, knows that his epilepsy is coming and warns the owner. So the camel most likely have felt the epilepsy coming.
All right, let's stop right here. First of all, these claims are unsubstantiated because of insufficient data. According to an article entitled "Dog Alerting and or Responding to Epileptic Seizures, a Scoping Review," we find that this review of scientific papers has revealed that this topic remains poorly investigated. Studies were mainly retrospective anecdotal reports with surveys that were prone to subjectivity, or case studies with a very small sample. Moreover, neither the training status of the dog nor its function were specified in all reviewed studies. It appears that appropriate empirical evidence that dogs can alert or respond to epileptic seizures is still missing. Further research is needed to better understand the characteristics of that determine a dog's suitability, the aspects of reliability and specificity of an alert for different types of seizures, the mechanisms behind the alerts, and the nature of the outcome of using dogs in context of epilepsy. Now, there are many other issues that come to mind. One of them is, let's assume that all this stuff is correct and that dogs can do all of this stuff. But those are dogs. What does that have to do with camels? Even if we assume that dogs could sniff out seizures, why assume that camels can do the same? More importantly, the dogs are trained to react. The same article states, among 13 service dog training centers interviewed, training methods varied, but reward-based training techniques were applied if a dog began to alert in order to reinforce this behavior, and training could take 6 months to 2 years to complete. So what does this mean? Did they train the camel of the Prophet for 6 months before it was ready? What about this narration when the Prophet, peace be upon him, rode on the horse of Abu Talha? Oh, let me guess. I'm sure that the horse of Abu Talha was trained as well, just in case. I always thought that they didn't even know what epilepsy was back then. By the way, guys, do you know that if you actually had epilepsy, it's quite unlikely that you would be able to drive a car? Most countries won't even give you a license unless you've been seizure-free for like 6 months to 2 years. You know why, right? I mean, if you get a seizure while driving, you could potentially die. Of course, another thing that we know is that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was receiving revelation all the time. He would be having seizures constantly. And what's really interesting is we don't find people preventing him from riding a camel. In fact, when he's sharing a camel, he's usually the person that's riding in front. Imagine being in the car with someone that constantly has seizures. Would you even let them drive? But wait, it gets better.
It's another indication that he suffered from epilepsy, and it's not an indication that the power of revelation made the camel fall, because other people were there
And didn't see, didn't
there
feel
wasn't
anything.
any power affecting
So that's a good point too. That if why is the weight just falling on top of Muhammad and the camel? Why is like nobody else getting affected there too? Like it's like very specific. Like when you think about it, it doesn't make sense.
So according to these geniuses, when the revelation comes down, everyone in the vicinity is supposed to be flattened by the revelation. That's what's supposed to happen.
Wow. Amazing point. Wow.
By the way, we actually do have an example of a companion that did feel the weight of the revelation, Zayd bin Thabit.
Now, this hadith is also an extension of the hadith where the guy was sitting with his leg under Muhammad's leg and he thought he was going to get it crushed. He wasn't getting it crushed from the burden of revelation. This hadith is sahih and it shows you that he was seized by severe trembling. That is what caused that sensation. So imagine this, if you have a tonic, remember that stiff lady, their legs went stiff? Your leg is underneath and somebody's legs go stiff. You're pushing down on them. It's going to create a sensation of weight. That's what was happening. There was no weight. In fact, Muhammad was just seizing. That kills that narration as well.
So according to Dr. Jalaluddeen, this is what happened to the Prophet, peace be upon him. And Zayd bin Thabit didn't think of moving. When he saw someone falling down, trembling, shaking, foaming at the mouth, he didn't think, maybe I should get out of the way? He never thought of that? This is just too ridiculous. Let's just read the hadith. Zayd bin Thabit narrates that the Prophet dictated to him, "Not equal are those of the believers who sit at home and those who strive and fight in the cause of Allah." Zayd bin Thabit added, "Ibn Maktoum came while the Prophet was dictating it to me and said, 'O Allah's Apostle,'" this is Ibn Maktoum saying, "O Allah's Apostle, by Allah, if I had the power to fight in Allah's cause, I would." And he was a blind man. So Allah revealed to his apostle while his thigh was on my thigh, and his thigh became so heavy that I was afraid it might fracture my thigh. Look at the timing of the revelation itself. It occurs immediately after the Prophet, peace be upon him, is asked a question. Then that state of the Prophet, peace be upon him, passed, and Allah revealed, "Except those who are disabled." After receiving the revelation, he immediately provides an answer. Does this really look like a seizure to you? The idea of this being a seizure doesn't even come to mind. When you read this hadith, you understand that there's a supernatural event occurring, and their thighs are right next to each other because they're probably sitting in the cross-legged position. And because, of course, they're cross-legged and right next to each other, the thigh of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is pushing down on Zayd. Revelation comes, it pushes down harder, and then when the revelation leaves, when the revelation is done, it gets lifted away. The sheer desperation behind the arguments in itself should be proof for Islam. You want us to believe that the camel was trained to smell epilepsy and to sit down? Ya Allah, Ya Doctor, if I was She-Camel, I'd bring a dog as my co-host because there's more evidence of dogs being able to detect epilepsy than there is of you being able to. And once again, Ya Doctor, don't use a hadith if they can be used against you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah, this doesn't sound like a seizure to me.
Yeah, but it's very interesting, like when they say that
I don't think we should really speculate on this too, just for the sake of credibility.